Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. A lot of interesting news this week. First, we have Binance being cut off from the SWIFT system, meaning they're not going to be allowed to send dollars anymore. We also have the deaths. Government personnel are sounding the alarm on deaths that are much higher than the norm in places like Britain and Australia. And we also have, we're going to talk about Elon Musk's next billion-dollar business. Let's get started. So not the best view. I had to improvise here a little bit. I'm traveling right now, but hopefully we'll do our best. I apologize if the sound isn't that good as well, if you guys are listening on the podcast. Overall for the week, the overarching kind of story is the fact that the Fed in the United States, the central bank, a lot of people are expecting now that they're not going to raise the interest rates as aggressively as they did before. So now everybody's expecting, for example, a 25-point interest rate hike, 0.25 instead of 0.75. This is extremely... what's the word in English? Extremely important, it affects you and I quite a bit due to the fact that since we live in this over-financialized economy, any little change in these interest rates affect absolutely everything, including, for example, the potential collapse of the dollar, because our finances in the United States isn't doing well at all. Right now, we're paying about 25% just in our budget, right, is interest. So I'm going to get to that and give you the details of that in just a second. So there's a lot of optimism that now, since the Fed isn't going to be raising interest rates as much, the economy is potentially going to do better, because obviously the higher they raise the interest rates, the harder it is to buy a house, the harder it is to buy a car, the harder it is for people to go out and buy things, because the debt that they're servicing is a lot more expensive the higher that interest rates go up. Remember that in 2007 and 2008, we began this kind of financial economy where everything relied on interest rates. And this was due to the fact that we had such a serious problem. We were supposedly days away from the financial system collapsing, that all of the governments around the world dropped the interest rates to spur, the movement in the economy again. And the reason why that works is because the majority of the economy, not only in the US, but most advanced economies around the world, is consumer spending. So if they lower the cost to buy something, you can buy more stocks, you can buy more cars, you can buy more houses, it's easier for you to service the debt, putting stuff on your credit card. And this is why the interest rate is so important when it comes to literally you and my daily life. Markets are expecting a 25% increase, as I mentioned to you guys before. Even though the inflation rate in the United States has gone down for the last 6 months consecutively, the food prices have gone up, according to what the government reports, 10.4%. I don't know if you guys remember in a previous video, I'm here in the US right now. I went to Five Guys. I normally have a few stops when I get here, right? First stop is Chipotle, then Five Guys, Shake Shack. I have like my favorites. That's one of the things I miss about living overseas. But anyway, so I went to Five Guys. We used to eat during the pandemic, 2020. Two of us, 2 hamburgers, 2 drinks, 2 fries, $20, max $24. Now, when I go to Five Guys to get a hamburger, it's $20 just for me. That literally is a 50% increase in the cost of food. But the government is only telling us that the actual inflation rate is 6 or 7%. And everything across the board has gone up. Right now, we have the same situation with things like eggs. Orange juice is next. I'm going to go ahead and explain that to you as well. So keep that in mind. If you guys haven't learned how to day trade, I would recommend it, or get your side hustle going, because what's going to come next is going to be worse. And this has to do with the potential collapse of the dollar and people using the dollar less. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. Overall, markets in the US and Canada, mostly positive. Markets in the Eurozone also are mostly positive, with Italy being the most positive of all. A lot of people now are excited because they're expecting that Europe isn't going to fall in that steep recession that they were thinking about that they were going to fall in. Latin American markets, mostly positive as well. Africa and the Middle East, those are higher as well. Egypt was the biggest market there during the week. And then in the far, far east, we have the Kospi in South Korea being 3.7% positive most of all. Bitcoin and crypto news, you're going to have to give me a moment. I'm just looking for all those people that said that Bitcoin couldn't be regulated because I can't seem to find them anymore. You guys remember that I told you, be careful with Bitcoin. It's not that you can't make money with it. It's just that I just don't think that the powers that be are going to let go of control of the financial system. There's news this week now that Binance is being cut off from the SWIFT system. If you don't know what the SWIFT system is, it's literally the system that the entire world uses to send payments cross borders. So now Binance is not going to be permitted to make any payments in US dollars below $100,000. And it always seems to be that way, right? Whenever they make the rules, they make it for you and I that have less capital, not the big boys that have billions and billions. So now the institutions can still pull out, $500,000 in Bitcoin and convert into dollars. But you and I, our $500 or $50,000, that's not allowed. So be careful. The only shitcoin, excuse my French, that I recommend is Shiba. I gotta update that video. Hopefully they put it in there, the little meme. Shiba Inu. Shiba Inu. There was an Ethereum whale that put in over a 500 million Ethereum whale bought 18.8 trillion Shiba. So that's the only, garbage coin that I recommend in the crypto space. And Bitcoin this week up 0.24%, just under 23,000. Seems like we got a little bit of a higher trend going. Remember that I mentioned to you guys, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, Bitcoin has crossed the 200 moving average, which in technical analysis speak on charts, that's theoretically when we should start seeing an uptrend. However, it might be what's called a buyer squeeze, where they pound the market to the upside to get out all the buyers and then slam it back down again. So we'll see what happens next. In commodities, UAE and India are discussing settling non-oil trade in rupees. It's like the nails of the collapse of the dollar are literally just coming faster and faster and faster and faster. If you guys remember last week, I talked about how Saudi Arabia now at Davos at the World Economic Forum was talking about how they might start accepting payment for oil in euros or even the real, which is their currency. This is big news because the reason why we live the lavish lifestyles that we live in the United States is because we have the benefit of owning the reserve currency of the world. So we can literally do whatever we want practically, and there's no consequences because everybody needs our money, right? That's literally kind of in a nutshell. And so if you guys don't remember, and I'll kind of repeat this because some of you guys did enjoy this. In 1945, there was an agreement with Saudi Arabia and the United States, which not forced, but I would say made everybody buy oil in dollars. This created what's called the petrodollar system. And the petrodollar system is the reason why we are the sole surviving empire in the world. This, unfortunately, is starting to change very drastically because since it was just customary to use dollars for everything, if Brazil needed to pay China for something or Brazil needed to pay Germany for something, instead of paying them with the Deutschmark, which is the German currency before, or the euro, what they would normally do is go out and buy dollars, have dollars in their pockets, or what's called a reserve, and then pay with everything in dollars. Now this news with the UAE and other countries doing direct border swaps, paying somebody directly in their currency instead of dollars is going to collapse the demand for the dollar. And that means that once all those dollars come home, the value of the dollar is going to collapse because there's more dollars overseas than in the United States. And it's simple supply and demand. If there's more of something, the value of it goes down. If there's less of something, the value goes up. This is part of the reason why we have the inflation right now, because we've been printing money since the 2008 and 2009 crisis. And now we're starting to kind of pay the piper, so to speak. So let me know if you guys enjoying that. It's a little bit more technical than that, but I always like to do these videos to kind of describe that to you because I want you guys to learn. Because obviously during a crisis, remember, even though there's a lot of bad news, there's always an opportunity to make money. And when things are bad, it's one of the best times to make money. Okay. Saudi Arabia, remember last week, announced that, I mentioned to you guys a moment ago, U.S. crude is down over 2% for the week. Brent, which is the international crude, went down over 1%. And now, outside of the egg prices exploding, we also have orange juice now, which is expected to explode. There is not a shortage, but I would say that Florida now has the lowest crop in 90 years, thanks to the hurricanes that hit the state. And in addition to that, we've had the frost, the bad weather, and also there's a disease, for example, that's eating a lot of the orange groves. So expect, if you like orange juice, probably should buy it now instead of later, even though it expires pretty quickly. Gold hit a high of $1,943.80, the highest since April. China's largest publicly traded brokerage is seeing record highs for gold in 2023. China is the biggest consumer of gold, followed by India. India is more kind of a cultural thing, right? They amass the gold for wealth. When they have weddings, they give away a lot of that gold, things like that, whereas China is a little bit different. Gold went up 0.06% to $1,928. Silver went down 1.30% to $23.70. And in the financial and banking news, this is what I wanted to explain a little bit to you guys about the dollar. The total debt right now is $31.4 trillion. The annual tax revenue, which is the budget, essentially, well, not the budget, but the money that the government takes in is $4.9 trillion. Now, we have a deficit because the budget is higher than that, but that's the money that the government takes in, right? The interest on the debt, just the interest on the debt, is $1.2 trillion by 2024. This is based on 1% interest rate. So if you do the math with the money, not debt, but not the total budget of the U.S. government, but the actual money that they take in, the amount of money that we're paying just on interest on the debt is 25% of the money coming in. I say the budget, but the budget obviously is a little bit higher. Now, this is assuming that the interest rates are going to continue at 1%. Now, remember that now, the government has to recycle that debt eventually, right? Because we can't pay it back. We don't have $30 trillion. So imagine that 25% that we have to pay every year of the money that's coming in rising when now the interest rates are 1%. The debt now was 1%, right? I don't think I said that properly. So let me back up a little bit. 1% is the amount that we're paying now on the debt. And if we were to take out those loans or refinance them now, we're talking about 5%. So literally, this is kind of the catch-22 that the central bank of the United States is in, because if they raise the interest rates too high, the government can't afford to pay its debts. But if they don't raise it, then the government's going to go bankrupt anyway because of inflation. So you see how we're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And this is why I'm telling you guys to prepare, because remember, the preppers were right. Egg prices are up 138% from last year. December 2021, a dozen eggs was $1.78. Last December 2022 was $4.25. I had somebody send me a video from New York City. There was a half dozen eggs for $8. Just ridiculous. There's a farmer advocate organization that's saying that the record-breaking prices of eggs don't have to do with the avian flu and all the chickens that they had to put down. It's also not because of the inflation. They're saying that all of these big egg companies are colluding with each other and actually raising the prices. Natural disasters and global economic losses totaled $313 billion in 2022. That's 57% above the 21st century average. So essentially, it's 57% above the not the historical average, but the average in general. Remember, in 2020, I mentioned to you guys the next 10 years, this next decade is going to be challenging, to say the least. Economic problems, social problems, and environmental problems. I think we're going to start seeing the disasters kind of escalate. I was going to say something, but I don't think I'll pass. Wednesday, the Central Bank of Canada raised its interest rate to a 15-year high at 4.5%. The interest on the Treasury yields, the inversion is continuing to increase, which means that's an indicator of the recession, as I explained to you guys last week. And Goldman Sachs is saying that in 4 cities, we're likely to see a crash in prices of over 25%. Austin, Texas, Phoenix, Arizona, San Diego, and San Jose in California. They're expecting prices nationally to go down by 6%, with mortgage rates at 6.5%. Pending home sales did suffer their worst annual sales on record. That's even with the increase in the sales in December. So remember that almost 70% of the economy in the United States is consumer spending. The housing market, construction, all that is about an average of 17%. So worst drop on record. People not buying houses. That's 17% of the economy's consumers are being just choked with inflation. Things are not going to end up good. But remember, you can still make money. You can still do really well. Global smartphone shipments plunged by the most on record as well. This to me is kind of a really big indicator because, you know, consumers like to go out and have new phones. It's kind of what we do, right? We go out, get the upgrade every year. Now that they're buying a lot less phones, that gives us another indication of what the consumer is doing. Because if the consumer isn't going out and spending money, remember that's 70% of the economy in the US. Most other advanced economies, meaning the entire world outside of Africa and a handful of countries in Southeast Asia, the majority of the economy is also consumer spending. Political news, Emerson College released a poll. We're going to start with the polls for the presidential election. They're saying that Orange Man, I'm not going to say his name, so I won't ban this channel too, because I already had a channel that was banned, supposedly is leading Biden by 4%. You know, we'll probably get into these debates, these ridiculous debates over the next few years now. Peru, because of the protests and the a bad situation that they're having in the country, closed Machu Picchu and left 417 tourists stranded. Colombia's still open, guys. Don't forget to come and visit Medellin. I got a few projects out there you guys are going to want to see. FBI agent, this is, I want to preface this with, I'm apolitical when I do these videos, right? So I'm not on one side or the other because I think it's important just to provide you the facts so you guys can learn. But I thought this was hilarious. FBI agent who investigated Orange Man, previous president, on Russia collusion has been arrested for colluding with Russia. And nearly more than 3,000 people, more than the usual, are dying in Britain, calling for an urgent investigation by the government. Australia also, which was one of the strictest countries in the world when it came to the things in your arm. I'm not going to say the name so they won't ban the channel. And also literally locking people up in camps because they didn't want to get the thing in your arm. Their death by heart attack has surged over 17% in 2022. I wonder what changed. Economic news, I'll leave it up to you to decide what the actual, I think kind of the secret's getting down. And I don't know if you guys saw the expose of Pfizer, how they're manipulating, they're directly, what's the word that they use? The virus of the pandemic. I don't want to say it because I don't want to get banned, but they're directing mutations because there's such a cash cow for the vaccines that they're literally changing it on purpose so we can go out and get more vaccines. These people are pure evil. Pure evil. In economic news, the past month, there's been 50,000 the word is job cuts. I always do the Spanish videos first, so I always think in Spanish when I do the English videos. But the past month, there's been 50,000 job cuts by the U.S. tech sector. 20% of all U.S. companies are planning layoffs in 2023. The U.S. manufacturing survey is coming at a contraction. This is like 3 or 4 months now that the PMI has come in a contraction, which is obviously we're expecting the recession to come and hit. German unemployment is now predicted to rise as well in 2023. And the GDP figure, the economy in the United States grew at a 2.9% annualized rate. Even though we did have those 2 quarters that were a contraction, we technically aren't in a recession. But we'll probably be walking into that in 2023. This is on top of the interest rates that were exploding, the energy shocks, the supply constraints. So pretty resilient that the economy actually still was able to grow. In Venezuela's inflation, the vice president said, has slowed to a annual 234% in 2022. And Argentina and Brazil are hysterically talking about creating a common currency for all of South America because anyone cares about those economies. Just kidding. Corporate news, Ken Griffin of Citadel Hedge Fund has broken the record for the most money made by a hedge fund at $16 billion. The last record was held by John Paulson when he bet against the mortgage market in 2009. He made $15 billion. And one caveat that I want to kind of put in here, Citadel isn't really a normal hedge fund. In my view, what they do is they steal money from you and I, because what they do is they front run the market, and it's completely legal, by the way. I wanted to do a video on that, so if you guys want me to do that video, let me know. ChatGPT from Open Source AI, which Elon Musk is involved with, has now launched a monthly program at $49 a month. That means that if they sell 2 million people at $49 a month, that's Elon Musk's next billion-dollar company. Microsoft also invested $10 billion, and supposedly the executives at Google are now swooning their pants because they see a viable competitor against Google. Meme traders are back. Bed Bath & Beyond, after announcing that they were going to go bankrupt, skyrocketed because it was so cheap. And shares of Tesla up 7% after they reported their earnings. They supposedly did phenomenally well. They have $22 billion in cash. Elon Musk also talked about how the number of orders that are coming in January are more than twice the amount that when they can produce. And supposedly it's the best amount of orders that they've had in their history. Amex rose over 10%, announcing that it's going to raise its dividend by 15%, but they did report lower guidance for 2023. There was an interesting piece of news on Amex. The majority of the other credit card companies are doing very well because of what's happening with the consumers, but Amex is a lot of times for rich people or people who have money, so they're actually doing a lot better because rich people just go out and spend money because they don't really care because they have all the money in the world. That's why you need to go out there and hustle. You got to be rich. Monday, Spotify announced to cut 6% of its workforce. Ford is planning a cut of 3,200 jobs, mostly in Europe. IBM announced they're going to let go 1.5% of their workforce. And a funny thing that happened last week, if you guys remember, Google announced that they were going to let go 12,000 of their employees, including massage therapists. So now that they're not doing well, they don't have to pay for massage therapists anymore. Shares of Adani Enterprises fell nearly 20%. If you guys don't know who Adani is, he is one of the richest men in the world and the richest man in India. There was a report that came out that he's doing a huge corporate fraud, so that brought down his companies and also the entire Indian stock market this week. In trade news, Netherlands and Japan have agreed to join the U.S. in restricting the exports of semiconductors and manufacturing equipment to China. India's January sunflower oil imports have surged to 473,000 tons, which is a record, 3 times the record. Now that the exporters, mostly, for example, Russia and others, they want to let go of their inventory. In a new study, this I thought was really interesting, the Earth's core may have stopped spinning. After a study that was done for 60 years, they're reporting that as of 2009, the core of the Earth, because if you guys don't know this, I'm just going to explain it real quick. So we live in a solar system, and there's a lot of things that come to try to hit us, like solar winds and asteroids and all that kind of thing. And supposedly because, gravity, right? If you jump, you come back down. Supposedly that's created by a molten core that's spinning. And with that spinning, there's a magnetism that's created around the Earth. Supposedly, that has stopped as of 2009 and has reversed. Surprisingly enough, if you guys didn't know, the North Pole is actually moving at a rate of about 30 to 40 miles per month from Canada to Russia. It's literally almost at the 40-degree mark in latitude. So literally just making a beeline to Russia. This is part of the reason why I think we're going to have a lot more natural disasters coming up. And they're going to become increasingly, the word in English is increasingly bad. So get your farm, raise your own chickens, because the preppers were right. In international events, the escalation in Ukraine is continuing now that countries like Germany, Poland, and the US are committing to send tanks. Unfortunately, this is something that could have completely been avoided, and I think was instigated by the US. But, you know, the powers that be, unfortunately, are the powers that be. So hopefully the tanks don't lead to missiles and nuclear war. And last but not least, in international events, Pakistan is trying to restore their electrical system after 220 million people in the country were left without electricity. They've been having running blackouts over the years. And other than that, that's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, the preppers were right.